Welcome to the Workology Podcast, a podcast for the disruptive workplace leader. Join host Jessica Miller-Merrill, founder of Workology.com, as she sits down and gets to the bottom of trends, tools, and case studies for the business leader, HR, and recruiting professional who is tired of the status quo. Now here's Jessica with this episode of Workology.
The subject of artificial intelligence is a hot one, especially in human resources and recruiting circles. According to Bersin's 2017 Human Capital Trends Report, 38% of companies believe AI and robotics will be fully implemented in their company within the next 5 years. And even more, recent research shows that AI adoption is moving along at a faster pace than many of us even realize. The bigger question is how AI and robots will impact our jobs, as well as the future of how we live, and how we'll provide for our futures and our business. Thank you to our podcast sponsor, Clear Company. Today I'm joined by Peter Weddle. Peter is an innovator in the HR and job search space. He's published multiple books, including his most recent, Circa 2118, What Humans Will Do When Machines Take Over. He's also the CEO of TA Tech. Peter, welcome back to the Workology Podcast.
It's great to be here, Jessica. Thanks for having me.
Let's talk to us a little bit about your background. How did you get here?
Well, I've always worked in and around HR. I was a partner in the Hay Group for a number of years and ran their government contracting subsidiary. But in the early 90s, I bought a company called Job Bank USA. It was pre-internet, but arguably one of the largest companies to use computers to match people to jobs. I sold that company to a Spherion subsidiary in the mid-90s and stumbled into a job writing a biweekly column for the Wall Street Journal about this new thing called the Internet, and in particular the employment space on the web. And I did that for a dozen years. Along the way, I started a publishing company. Some of your listeners may have used the Weddle's Guide to Employment Sites over the years. And then in 2007, it just seemed to me that talent acquisition had become important enough and talent acquisition technology a big enough market that it deserved a trade organization. So I founded TA Tech, the Association for Talent Acquisition Solutions, and that's where I hang my hat today.
Awesome. Well, I love hearing the history and really your work and involvement in the TA and the job board space. How exciting.
Well, it's been an interesting ride, that's for sure.
Well, it's going to get a whole lot more interesting from what I've been reading in your book.
Yeah, I've always been interested in the intersection of technology and people. And as I look at the world of work today, I think we're seeing a new kind of AI. I call it artificial ignorance. I mean, if you just look at the data that are being presented, the Boston Consulting Group, for example, says that 23% of all industrial tasks will be automated by robots by the year 2025. That's just around the corner. PwC says that 38% of all jobs will be automated just 5 years after that, by 2030. So these are not the exaggerations of over-caffeinated salespeople and technophiles out of Silicon Valley. These are credible research organizations predicting a huge disruption in the workplace, in people's careers, and we're not doing anything about it.
Well, I appreciate the stats because I think it kind of level sets the conversation, because our topic today is how robots will change our workplace. And from the sounds of it, there's going to be a huge shift happening. Can you talk more about it a little bit, specifically around the area of what you call technology singularity?
Well, we've all heard about or I would say most of us have heard about the technological singularity because it's appeared in movies, in the Star Trek series, in songs, in all kinds of, or all aspects of our popular culture. Basically, the technological singularity is defined to be that point in time when machines become smarter than humans. And what that means is that we will, at that point, have removed the friction of human intelligence from the development of these machines. Right now, AI is limited because all of the learning that these machines do is guided by human intelligence. So it proceeds at a pace that is limited to what we as humans can provide. But when we reach the technological singularity, machines will be smarter than we are, and they will be able to teach themselves better than we can. And that will dramatically accelerate how these machines become smarter, more capable, more empathetic, more intelligent. And that's why we are predicting such a great impact in the world of work.
Skynet, that's what I think of.
Well, Hollywood says, these things are going to be a negative influence and have a negative impact on our lives. In my book, I think that the next 100 years are going to be tough because there's going to be a lot of disruption as we try to deal with the technological singularity and the growth of these smart machines. But at the end of that time, if we do the hard work that we're going to have to do over the next 100 years, I think we're going to enter an era that's going to be extremely exciting and really offer people a chance to do work that taps into their talent, what they love to do and do best, and give them a chance to work at their calling, where they can use their talent to really have a positive impact on the lives that we live.
So let's talk a little bit about maybe some industries or areas that you really see robots and automation making an impact maybe first.
Well, right now, AI, machine learning is really most effective with repetitive tasks, with tasks that follow a set process and are done over and over again, or where the speed and the strength capabilities of the machine can be tapped into best. So trucking and transportation, logistics and warehousing, the production line. We've long known that robots were going to play a big role on the production floor, but now we're seeing them move into white-collar jobs. For example, the headlines for the U.S. Open this year that you read online were not written by a journalist. They were written by IBM Watson. You have medical assistants helping doctors diagnose illnesses. It's increasingly tough for young lawyers coming out of law school to find jobs as associates because what associates used to do in law firms is all the legal research necessary for the partners to take cases to court. Well, guess what? That research is now being done by machines. We even have machines programming other machines at this point. So I think we're only scratching the surface, and again, the impact of that technological singularity is going to simply accelerate the movement of these of this technology into all white and blue collar jobs.
Wow. I think it's interesting that you mentioned white collar and blue collar jobs. Trucking, I can kind of see. You think about AI, automation, and things like autonomous vehicles, things of that nature, and obviously production. But it gets a little scary when I think about Watson writing all the headlines to my blog content. I don't want to be out of a job. And then you've got all the legal research, specifically if you're working in human resources and you're looking at case law, or you are tapping your chief counsel to give some guidance. Those things sound like they might be able to be done on a basic level by automation and AI technology soon.
I think we are in for a dramatic change in the workplace. I think that it's not an exaggeration to say that as every generation of worker passes through the workplace, we'll see more and more jobs automated. And this is all going to happen within the lifetimes, within the careers of many of your listeners. I mean, if you accept the fact that the technological singularity, that point when machines are going to get started get smarter than people. That's going to happen in 2040. That's the latest prediction. That prediction was made by a bunch of academicians and research scientists, so not by off-the-wall fiction writers. So within the next 20 or 30 years, we're going to see machines get smarter than we are, and we're going to have to deal with the implications of that, not only for the world of work, but for our educational institutions, our social institutions, our government institutions. All of that is unprepared for what's about to hit us, and that's why I think the best description of where we are right now is AI, artificial ignorance.
I like that. We are ignorant, and that's why we're looking to you to help enlighten us on this topic. Why is human resources and talent acquisition role so important in all this?
I think that this crisis, and I don't think it's hyperbole to describe it as a crisis, this crisis is going to be the tipping point that finally puts HR at the table with the other decision makers in the enterprise. Why? Because they are going to be the first and the last to go as machines move into the workplace. They're going to be the first to go among the first to go, because as more and more of these positions are filled by robots, there will be fewer and fewer human workers in the enterprise, and therefore less need for recruiters, less need for comp and benefits folks, less need for compliance folks, and so forth. But HR is also going to be among the last and maybe the very last to leave the enterprise, because only they have the expertise to help guide the enterprise through this traumatic period when we're going to see lots and lots of people pushed out of the enterprise. I call it final sizing. It's not right sizing, it's not downsizing, it's final sizing, taking all of the humans out of the enterprise. And only HR, I think, has the skills, the expertise, the compassion to help the enterprise get that right.
Well, I think most of us that are listening to this podcast, I'd like to think, unfortunately, we've had the experience where we have had to deliver some tough conversations, layoffs, restructures, terminations. That's all part of the job.
Yeah, it sure is. And I think, HR will, as I say, finally get that seat at the table, because the CEO and his or her direct reports are going to need that expertise.
Let's take a reset. This is Jessica Miller Merrill, and you are listening to the Workology podcast. Today we're talking with Peter Weddle about the future of the workplace with robotics and artificial intelligence. You can connect with Peter on Twitter at Peter Weddle, PeterWeddle. A special thank you to our sponsor, Clear Company.
This podcast has been sponsored by Clear Company, a complete talent management platform that unifies recruiting, onboarding, performance management, and goal tracking into one award-winning solution. Visit clearcompany.com for product information.
So I want to get back to it. You're saying the robot apocalypse is coming, and the way we get work, find jobs, and do our own job right now is going to fundamentally change. How can HR help organizations get prepared? What should they be doing maybe right now, 2 years from now, 4 years from now?
Well, in my book, I talk about 3 areas. The first is individual preparation. I describe it as situational awareness. It's not necessary for HR professionals to go out and take courses in deep learning and building algorithms and teaching machines how to think, but it is important to understand the impact of those technologies, and that means to begin paying special attention to which jobs are being automated, which industries are seeing automation, which organizations in your own hometown are most likely to be affected by this technology. To just be aware so that these changes don't hit you like a bolt out of the blue. Secondly, I think there's an important role for HR members to play collectively. Whether it's as part of an association or in some other form, it's important that HR members have their voices heard and force the institutions in our society, but especially the government, to begin to think about what are we going to do when this happens? I mean, if we're going to start throwing all of these people out of the world of work, how are they going to make a living? How are they going to support their family? And, Bill Gates and Elon Musk and others have already begun to talk about the need for a universal basic income. At the end of the day, we're going to have to find a way to fund an income for everybody. Not that's a low-class income, but what is at least a middle-class income for everybody so that they have an opportunity to survive and prosper in this new world that we're going to be living in. So collectively, we're going to have to force our government to pay attention. And then finally, as corporate leaders, I think HR people have to help the enterprise leaders deal with the situation, deal with the workforce issue, not as technology experts so much, but as experts in the impact of the technology on human beings, on workers.
I'm making notes. This is all really good stuff. What about HR leaders who are listening to this podcast? Because some of what you're describing is a little scary. And it sounds like some HR jobs can be automated and might be going away. So what should HR be thinking about for themselves if 23% of all human roles, including HR by 2020, might be replaced? What should we be doing to help our own careers?
Well, first of all, I think we should try to avoid AI, avoid artificial ignorance by really committing ourselves to the development of situational awareness. We have to take it on as almost a second job. How can we make sure that we stay aware of what's happening in the world of work as this new technology begins to take over more and more of these tasks? Secondly, I think we need to pay attention to what we're going to be learning as this time goes along about the skills required to work with and to work for machines. That's just going to be the name of the game. Right now, for example, we have what I would call virtual companions. We have these cute little chat bots that help us with our recruiting and so forth. We have driverless cars, for example. But the human being is always in the role, and they are always the senior partner, if you will, in this human-machine partnership. But it's pretty clear. For example, in the case of driverless cars, it's pretty clear that the driver, who is the backup system, the fail-safe system, is imperfect, him or herself. So what's going to happen over time is that the partnership is going to be reversed, and machines are going to go from being the junior partner to the senior partner, and humans are going to become the junior partner in this relationship. And we're going to have to understand the skills required to play those changing roles. And finally, we're going to have to help prepare our kids for what's going to be a very, very different world. Over the next 100 years, we're going to see occupations, career fields, professions, crafts and trades. They're all going to change at warp speed. And we're going to have to imbue our kids with an adaptability, a flexibility, a capability to absorb all of this change and put it to work for them so that they are the masters of that change, not its victim.
I think you make a really important point here, which is the awareness piece and the flexibility and the adaptability piece, because we have a choice. We're listening to this podcast right now and we go to work every day and we are thinking about hopefully artificial intelligence and automation and technology, but we have a choice to either turn our back and say, you know what, I don't want to deal with this right now, put your head in the sand and just go about your business. Or you can turn around and say, hey, this change is coming. Let me educate myself. Let me really dig in and think about how this new technology, this automation, this AI, this machine learning can be used and become a subject matter expert on, some of these topics, as well as being the subject matter expert on the workforce and be a leader and help drive change and prepare the rest of your family, your friends and the workplace for this change that's going to happen. So I like the direction that you're going. And I hope people that are listening to this podcast want to be part of that movement, because I think that that's critical to HR's new position in the organization.
I think you're absolutely right. I would argue that becoming an expert and citing the data. I gave you 2 data points at the beginning of our conversation. There are many, many more, and there are more being created every single day. I mean, McKinsey just published its 2018 report on AI in the workplace. They do it every single year, and there are more and more data points. So HR people need to become the experts with that data on the impact of this technology in the enterprise, and not cite that data once in a memo, shoot it up the chain of command and forget about it. But as you were saying, to be on top of that data and to be its spokesperson day in, day out, discussing the implications of what that data is telling us, both in terms of opportunities for an organization, but also for its responsibilities for dealing with their workers in a way that is credible to the organization and its brand.
Any suggestions on maybe ways to broach the conversation with the executive team and the CEO to talk about this impending change that's coming?
Well, one of the things you could do is give them a copy of my book. But I think that data is the key in the door. I think most CEOs are data driven. They're very quantitatively oriented. So having data that's been collected from credible organizations like the Boston Consulting Group, like PwC, like McKinsey, like academic institutes all around the country, having that data at your fingertips and understanding what it means and how it can impact the organization, I think that's how you start the conversation. You make yourself an expert, as I said a little earlier, not on the technology, but on its impact.
Well, while robots and automation is obviously going to impact the workplace, I wanted to get your take on an area that I feel like everybody's talking about, and that's the gig economy and the contract job market. How do you see AI impacting these hot areas right now?
Well, I'm an old English major, and one of the genres that you study typically in English is something called magical realism, which combined supernatural kinds of ideas with a realistic portrayal of life. And I've tried to do a riff on that theme and create something called newsfeed realism. What I've tried to do is to take the kinds of activities, the kinds of occurrences, the kinds of situations that we are seeing presented in our newsfeed today and extrapolate into what they might look like in the future. And it is a fictional portrayal, but I think one that is much more tied to the kind of reality that we actually see in our lives than science fiction, for example. And as I thought about the gig economy, and the impact of this technology, one of the situations that will occur over the next 100 years as we move from 2018 to circa 2118 is that I think that as more and more people lose their occupations, lose their professions to automation, we're going to see the extended family move back together. They're going to all come and live together because they're going to need all those hands, all those minds to generate enough income to support themselves. And they will do that by colluging together a whole bunch of gig jobs. And we will move from where we are today, where about a third of the economy is engaged in gig kinds of work, to probably 75 or 80% of the economy being involved with gig kinds of works, because that's the only way people are going to be able to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. And then we will go on from that to a point in time where circa 2118, we're all working, but in a very different way. We aren't working for paid employment because we will have installed a universal basic income. We will be working for work or doing our work because it does something for us. There's an intrinsic value. The things that we always talk about the challenges, the joys that come from working at your passion, we'll finally be able to do that because we won't have to rely on a job in order to support ourselves. I think the biggest con that we have in our capitalist society today is that you have to wait until you retire to do what you really love to do. Well, if the next 100 years finally lead us to a point in time where we have a universal basic income and we have universal health care, then finally people can begin to work that way and do the things they love to do, express their talent in endeavors that are meaningful to them.
I like that last part. You can kind of find your joy and be able to do that throughout your life. Like you said, instead of waiting until you're retired to do what you love.
That's right. That's the light at the end of the tunnel, I think.
Absolutely. Well, Peter, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today, to talk about this topic. Obviously, it's an important one. It's not going to be going away. I know that people are interested in this. AI is something that people are always looking for resources and information to learn more. Obviously, your book is a great place to start, but where can people go to learn more about you as well and your book?
Well, the book is on Amazon. Again, as you've been kind enough to say, it's called Circa 2118, What Humans Will Do When Machines Take Over. And if you'd like to know a little bit more about me, the book has its own website. It's circa2118.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. We'll link to the book and additional resources that you've mentioned here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Appreciate being here.
Hi, my name is Riley Merrill. I am Jessica Merrill's daughter. I am selling Girl Scout cookies. Go to workology.com/Girl Scouts to order your cookies. For every 10 boxes you buy online from me, Workology will give 1 box to Operation Cookie Drop. Thank you for supporting Girl Scouts.
Peter gave us a lot of food for thought, including which industries and jobs AI will impact first and most. I also agree with Peter. This is a really good opportunity for HR to become a leader in the workplace when it comes to the AI conversation. This means educating ourselves on these topics so that we can really prepare our workplace and our leaders for their future workplace and also the business landscape. To be honest, after having this conversation with Peter, I had a little bit of anxiety, especially when I think about the future workplace and what it will look like for my 10-year-old daughter. His thoughts on universal income are something I will be writing and looking into in the next coming weeks. I want to make an informed decision about how our lives will be impacted by AI and this robot technology. I'll be sharing that with you as well. A special thank you to our podcast sponsor, Clear Company. Have a great day.
Production services for the Workology podcast with Jessica Miller Merrill provided by TotalPicture.com.